Back in May, as national uprisings broke out in the wake of George Floyd's wrongful murder by Minneapolis police, and it became normal for Portland's downtown area to become thick with tear gas and pepper spray each night, a whole burst of mutual aid networks quickly sprang out of Portland's woodwork, some which had existed for years and some which began as a response to either coronavirus or the national Black Lives Matter uprisings, with the aim of providing a network of tangible community care created for and by members of the community. This took the form of jail support, bail funds, free community acupuncture, safe ride systems, community free fridges and pantries, and much more. Amongst these networks were several groups who aimed to support Portland's unsheltered community, a population which has grown substantially since the beginning of March. Back in June, I started volunteering with a mutual aid organization known as the People's Store Portland, an anti-capitalist, mobile, free pop-up store that operates out of a box truck and offers requested resources to the unsheltered community here in Portland. Along with PPE, clothing, tents, tarps, water, snacks, and other basic necessities, members of the People's Store spend each Sunday making large batches of tamales to give out at our twice-weekly distribution. This weekly ritual quickly became, and still often remains, the highlight of my week, which is why I decided that for my final project, I wanted to look into the history of tamale making as well as its evolution into current day. As many of you likely know, the tamal, or the more common anglicized version of the word tamale, is a steamed pocket of masa, traditionally filled with meat marinated in mole or salsa, and encased in a plant leaf wrapping, most commonly corn husk or banana leaf. The word originates from an Aztec word meaning wrapped, though scholars have also attributed the phonetic pronunciation of the Mayan glyph for tamal to mean sustenance. While many different varieties of tamales exist all over Latin America, it's Mexico which has the most variety. Tamales have been eaten by Aztec and Mayan civilizations for generations to support their people. Since the tamal comes with a built-in protective covering, is nutrient-dense, and travels easily, it's been relied upon by indigenous societies there for generations. In a 2015 lecture as part of a Foodways of Mexico series, scholar of Latin American studies Claudia Alarcón notes that maíz is a central part of Mesoamerican indigenous culture. And according to many Mayan and Aztec cultural myths, maíz is often seen as synonymous with life itself. It's also often viewed as a connection between the gods and people, which explains why corn is so often used as a central offering in ceremonial banquets and used on many altares today. While the stories themselves are long and much more beautiful than I could describe here, Alarcón explains that tamales and water are seen as representing flesh and blood, and as she says, maíz becomes the bond between the people and the gods and the vehicle through which life is passed on and regenerated. In her lecture, Alarcón also notes, it is important to know that tamales have been used since pre-Columbian times and have evolved to include new ingredients, changing costumes and technology. She also points out that the tamales we're familiar with today are made with ingredients which were brought over post-Spanish conquest, forming a new mestizo cuisine. Before this, the tamales in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica used ingredients like turkey, aquatic fowl, iguana, tomato, squash, algae, insects, and wild greens, while the tamales made under the Spanish colonization became made with chicken, beef, pork, onion, cheese, and mole, ingredients we see in tamales today. As we've read about this semester, tamales continued to be made, eaten, and sold throughout Latin America and the US, both in a street vending setting and also within the homes of Latinx and Chicanx families. Many of the articles we've read about Latinx foodways this semester paint a picture for us of the many ways that Latinx and Chicanx foodways serve as world makings for street vendors, their customers, and many other Latinx and Chicanx families who have moved away from homes to an unfamiliar and often unwelcoming place. Within the context of Portland, I feel so fortunate to have had the privilege to learn how to make tamales from dear friends and fellow volunteers involved with mutual aid work who have been making tamales with their families their entire lives. Thanks to them and our other volunteers, we're now able to provide a batch of about 200 hot tamales to give to our houseless neighbors each week who receive little to no support or care from our city. It was my dear friend Loba who originally had the idea to make tamales after realizing that their historically built-in technology, being nutrient-dense, high in calories, and easy to transport and travel with, would be just as useful in a current-day, gentrified cityscape with a growing food scarcity problem as it has been throughout history.